Over the past month, Vice President Kamala Harris has appeared alongside one political surrogate, perhaps more than any other, a conservative former Republican lawmaker, former Congresswoman Liz Cheney of Wyoming, who joins us. Congresswoman, thank you so much for joining us. We have a lot to get to, but first I just want to give you a chance to respond to what you heard from Senator Vance, since he invoked you so many times, even though I never mentioned your name once.
Look, Jake, I think what we just watched is, what it looks like when someone has got to go through just unbelievable contortions to try to find a way to defend the person that J.D. Vance himself called America's Hitler, and just so many just really stunning attacks. Look, attack me, that's fine. You can do that all you want. But for J.D. Vance to be going after, retired four-star Marine General, Gold Star father, John Kelly, for him to be attacking and lashing out like that, Vice President Pence, so many others, secretaries of defense, the former chiefs of staff, former national security advisor. I mean, I think, look, they understand the Trump campaign, Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, they absolutely understand how damaging it is for the American people to see all of these unprecedented levels of senior officials from the Trump administration telling the American people that Donald Trump is unfit. And so, they concoct these things that are completely divorced from any connection to the truth to lash out and attack. But look, the American people understand, to have these kinds of people like General Kelly come out and speak publicly, they know that at his core, Donald Trump, he really has no conscience. They know that he's erratic. They know that he's chaotic. They know that he's cruel. And they're telling the American people that. And so it does take a lot of contortions and a real desperation to try to convince people that they shouldn't listen to those who know Donald Trump best.
And his argument, as you heard there, was that all of the Trump administration officials that I mentioned, from Vice President Pence to General Milley to General Mattis to General McMaster to Alyssa Farah, Griffin to, on and on and on, that every one of them opposes Trump because they want to involve the United States into foreign wars. And that was where he learned. And he said, absolutely, when I said, is that really what you're saying? Is that really your argument?
Yeah.
What did you make of that?
Look, the reality of the situation that we're facing is that, people that have long been focused on national security issues, people that, look to Ronald Reagan as a guide and as an example, we understand that the way that you avoid war is, in fact, peace through strength. And when you look at something like what J.D. Vance and Donald Trump want to do in terms of forcing Ukraine to surrender, J.D. Vance says that, he's really agnostic as between Russia and Ukraine. Forcing Ukraine to surrender in the aftermath of the kind of brutality that we've seen from Putin, suggesting that America doesn't favor Ukraine over Russia, demonstrates just a total lack of understanding of the importance of our allies in keeping the peace. Donald Trump, every chance he gets, he attacks our allies. He talks about our allies as though, he were a mafia boss. He seems to completely fail to understand that in order to keep peace, we have to have allies with us. We also have to be strong. And, Putin obviously now is allied with Iran. He's allied with North Korea, allied with China. And so J.D. Vance and Donald Trump think that the right solution there is to go in and reward Putin for what he's done, reward all of his adversaries for what they've done, rather than stand with our allies. So, I think what you saw is a mix of desperation and naivete, and just a really, an attempt to do the best I think he can figure out how to do to convince the American people not to believe what they know to be true about Donald Trump. And I think his desperation is clearly showing.
So it's not just Vance, obviously. Donald Trump has been trying to use your support for Vice President Harris as a way to divide would-be supporters of Harris, especially just the other day, he talked about, well, I'll just roll the clip. There are a lot of voters out there, obviously, on the left, on the progressive left, Arab Americans, Muslim Americans, who don't like Biden-Harris administration's support for Israel in the war in Gaza, and Trump trying to exploit your support for Harris. Take a listen.
Kamala is campaigning with Muslim-hating warmonger Liz Cheney, who wants to invade practically every Muslim country on the planet. And let me tell you, the Muslims of our country, they see it and they know it.
I mean, obviously, Donald Trump in December of 2015 talked about a ban on Muslims entering the United States. But here he is in 2024 trying to use you as an argument against Harris to encourage Muslim American voters to vote for him.
Yeah, you know, again, I think that the Trump campaign, Donald Trump, they have no way to respond substantively to the truth, to the facts that Vice President Harris has built a coalition that is unlike any other we have ever seen, frankly, certainly in modern American history, maybe in American history writ large. And that is a coalition that includes people from, you know, the far left of the political spectrum to people on the far right of the political spectrum, including many people who used to work for Donald Trump. And the reason that we have all come together is not necessarily because we say we agree on every issue. We don't, certainly. But we understand fundamentally that the defense of the rule of law, the defense of our Constitution, those are the things that are at stake in this election. And Donald Trump doesn't have any way to explain this broad, again, unprecedented support that Vice President Harris is receiving. And I would also say I am absolutely confident, having spent time with Vice President Harris, having talked to her, she really does believe and understands how important it is for her to govern as a president who unites us, as a president who listens to different perspectives and points of view, as a president who's going to do what's right for this country. And, you know, I hope that that you guys play as much Donald Trump footage as you can over the course of the next 9 days or so, because the more the American people see him, the more they remember, you know, we cannot have a president who is unstable and depraved and cruel. And that's what Donald Trump proves himself to be every time he says things like that.
You mentioned how you certainly don't agree with Kamala Harris on every issue, or even most issues, in terms of the traditional political debates of domestic politics. Let's talk about abortion, which is a big issue in this race. You are against abortion. You're pro-life. You supported Roe v. Wade being overturned in 2022. Last week at an event with Kamala Harris, you said you were deeply troubled by what you've watched happen in many Republican-led states since the Dobbs decision in terms of the bans that the legislatures have put into place. Can you explain your view on this further?
Yeah, and well, what I would say is I'm not the only one who holds this view, but I think that, and I certainly have talked to many of them, you have pro-life women all across this country who have been watching what's happened in places like Texas, in places like North Carolina, where since Roe was overturned, you've had laws put in place at the state level that are preventing women from getting life-saving care. You have circumstances where, you know, women are faced with, you know, whatever sorts of emergency care it might be, whether it's miscarriages and they require treatment, that aren't able to get that treatment, where you have doctors unsure of whether or not the kind of care that the woman needs may in fact be something that's been criminalized by state law. And that's not acceptable. And I think that's where you have women who, like me, have been pro-life, who are saying, no, what we have seen happen cannot stand. You know, when you have the Attorney General of the state of Texas suing to get access to the medical records of, you know, women who have sought abortions, but Donald Trump won't give us access to his own medical records. I mean, this is we've crossed over into a situation that is bringing women together, uniting women who are pro-choice and pro-life behind Vice President Harris in defense of making sure that women have health care, life-saving health care, care that they need so that they don't find themselves in a situation where either their own life is at risk, where they can't have babies in the future. This is just simply unsustainable.
Former Republican Congresswoman Liz Cheney, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.